Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be with you all, and especially with these particular practices that the Council on Uncertain Human Future continues to bring forward. I think this is it's just a tremendous vehicle for all of us to help metabolize these challenging times that we are in. And what I want to share is coming out of a Dharma Sunday that I taught a couple of weeks ago. So some of you may even have heard some of this material before, but I've been offering thoughts recently around my sense, at least, of what is really needed now in this time of rupture, in this bardo. What Francis Weller's, is it Francis Weller who's calling it the long dark? I think so. Um, and what's coming to me a lot is that we need a new way of being. We need a new way of healing, and we need ways to harness our innate capacity to remember who we really are and why we're here. Not here as in tonight, but here on this planet at this time. And so I'm going to start with a little quote from Francis Weller, actually, because he just has a really beautiful way of putting in place these little phrases that speak to my heart. So he says, "We are designed for encounter. Our senses are rivers of connection in a continuous exchange with the world around us. How deeply we experience this encounter, what we come to recognize and discover, is a question of presence, of reverence." So the question I'm coming back to is, what kind of receptivity, what kind of attention or practice would most effectively invite a reconnection that can transform, that can awaken, and that can actually really remind us of who we really are? And for me, so much of that happens in my relationship with the natural world. And so a lot of times I'm asking myself, how can I really learn how to listen? To listen beyond thought, to listen into this innate wholeness that is at the core of my own being, and that the living world is always singing, right? This song of our belonging. And one of the ways that it keeps coming to me these days is what I've been calling breathing through reverence. So just hearkening back to what Francis Weller was saying, that, how deeply we can experience our belonging is a question of presence, of reverence. So I've been really thinking about that in terms of our breath, breathing with reverence. So I'm going to say a few things about the breath, and then I'm going to say a few things about reverence for our time together tonight. And I think we all are fully aware of how fast our lives are moving, right? We're moving through our days so quickly that the breath is usually an afterthought, if we think about it at all, right? It's a background function in the service of our productivity. And we're taught to master, to measure, to manipulate our bodies, our environments, our time, our breath, our jobs, our families. And when we're in that particular paradigm, then the natural world, the living world, is a resource. And breath is fuel. And the self is a project that needs to be optimized. And so the result is that we find ourselves on the outside, looking in, consuming rather than communing. And this kind of disconnection, it's not only psychological, it's not only social, it's ontological. That we've inherited this view of the world that treats mind and matter, self and other, spirit and nature as fundamentally separate. And the consequences of that, are that we find ourselves living in what Sarah has so beautifully coined this time of rupture, of climate collapse, of loneliness, of mental exhaustion, mental and emotional exhaustion, of ecological numbness, and of political intransigence. And our breath, which was at one point the most immediate expression of our belonging, is now shallow, unnoticed, constricted. Every time I go to bed at night, I lie there, and for the first few breaths, I realize as I breathe in, I do this deep breathing, just deep breath in, and then my whole body on the exhale finally has this moment to just, open and relax. And the difference feels so, it's like, why am I not doing this every moment? But this kind of shallow, unnoticed, constricted breath, it's mirroring the culture that we're in that has forgotten how to listen. So tonight, I just want to invite us all to remember that the breath, it's not just a technique of self-regulation, although that's the example I just gave, but it is also a sacred exchange with the living world. And, the breath is this always accessible conduit that we have to our innate wholeness, to what has actually never really been lost. It's only been forgotten. Really, the breath is the most fundamental aspect of our lives. We don't survive if we're not breathing. And like an ocean's waves that are meeting the shore, our breath is moving in a rhythm. And that rhythm is with the breath of the earth. And in the same way that we feel our own breath, we can feel the breath of the world over our skin, through our hair. We can feel that crisp, fresh morning air. Like Sarah was saying, the wind right now, it's very windy in this part of the country, and it's very cold. So that crispy, fresh breath of wind, this world, it's breathing alongside us. And it's inviting us into this sacred dance together. And in the Buddhist tradition that I teach in and I practice in, the breath is understood not simply as a function of our bodies, although certainly it is that, but it's a way to soften these edges of our striving and an encouragement to relax into simply being, just being. And when we consciously relax with the breath, it can help open us into this boundless presence where everything is arising together in a spontaneous harmony. So every breath is an invitation to return to what is already whole, right? And not through efforting, not through trying, but just through attuning. Right? There's one of my teachers used to teach when he was teaching basic shamatha practice, which is a basic mindfulness practice of following the breath. He would say that you follow the in-breath, and then on the out-breath, when you get to the end of that breath, you let go into spaciousness, into stillness, and you rest in the gap. And then the next breath comes in. And so every breath is an invitation to begin to relax into the vastness and the presencing of everything that is part of our field of experience. And when we do that, we start to directly experience how fragile the veil of separation is between the sense of I as a separate being and reality itself. And then when that veil starts to lift, the web of, it's hard not to quote Thich Nhat Hanh in this topic, the web of interbeing that connects us to the earth and to the sky and to the dance of all life starts to be visible, starts to be accessible. Each breath, every breath, releasing us into this natural state where life is flowing in this uncontrived and simple and perfect way. So in the Buddhist tradition, you use the breath as a vehicle to carry yourself into an open awareness. And that's one way of beginning to return to who we really are and remembering our inseparability with the living world. Because when you sit and you breathe, and it's not about changing anything, and it's not about achieving anything, but it's simply about attunement. It's simply about recognizing that, as one very famous Tibetan Buddhist teacher has said, that we are in the universe and the universe is in us. So each breath is a bridge, and the trees are no longer surrounding us, they include us. And the rhythm of our breath echoes the rhythm of the forest. And when we experience this directly, it awakens feelings of wonder and of reverence. So contrary, right here, now I'm going to come to talk a little bit about reverence, but contrary to what we might think, right, reverence arises not from awe at something that's distant, but from intimacy with something that is shared. So what is reverence? The way I'm thinking about it is that reverence is an approach to the world that is assuming sacred relationship. And it is a state of receptivity from within which we can experience the wholeness that exists in every moment. And the word reverence comes from the Latin word reverentia, which means awe or respect, honor, or even to be afraid of, actually. And when we bring reverence to our gaze on ourselves and our environments, we're opening ourselves to these feelings of amazement and wonder and gratitude. So one way to re-enchant ourselves with the living world is to cultivate reverence. And, we live on a planet where plants are transforming into light, I'm sorry, what I mean to say is plants transform light into nutrients, into oxygen. It's like a miracle, right? It's this amazing thing. Snakes rebirth themselves by shedding their skin. Bats can see by sound. And trees talk to each other. And these phenomena, they're not any less magical just because science has helped explain them. But when we devote ourselves to this planet, and if we're going to devote ourselves to this planet, we have to start by returning ourselves to the wonder of this world. Because the more enchanting we find the world, the more we remember how deeply interwoven we are with it. So reverence is about more than just restoring our respect for the natural world. It's about understanding our spiritual relatedness to it. And that's something that is key, because the deeper our sense of reverence for the living world goes, the more we start to know it by another name, which is love. And it's love that binds together two seemingly separate organisms. It's the energy of love. It's love that causes us to see the world with fresh eyes. And I really think that if we're going to repair our wounded relationship with the world, we are going to be asked to relearn how to love it. And this really includes loving ourselves. It includes loving each other and all of the species, all of the living beings with whom we share this planet. So all I really want to do is invite us to notice that there are these moments, right? There are these brief, almost imperceptible moments when our breath becomes more than survival. When the inhale isn't just oxygen And the exhale is not just carbon dioxide, but it's a kind of remembering, and I feel this when I'm hiking through the forest, or when I'm relaxing into the natural flow of my breath when I'm practicing. I feel it when I'm dancing and my breath is moving in concert with my body's movements. In all those kinds of moments, it feels like the breath is knitting me back into the fabric of reality, and I can really feel my inseparability. So when we breathe with reverence, we feel the world breathing back. And to breathe with reverence is to touch the sacred, right? Every inhale, a prayer, every exhale, a release into the vast unfolding mystery of the living world. And every rise and fall of the breath, an invitation to remember who we really are, that we're not separate, but we're woven, breathed, we're held in this web of this vast living world. So breathing with reverence is a return to what has always been whole, not through any kind of effort, not through any kind of improvement, but through attunement. So each breath, each gentle in-breath, each unforced exhale, we can sense that we're not separate from the world around us, but a part of its living fabric. And I'm just going to end my reflection with a short poem by Rilke that I just love. This poem. It's just such a beautiful reminder of exactly what I feel like I've been trying to share with you. He says it so succinctly. We could have just read the poem. Ah, not to be cut off, not through the slightest partition shut out from the law of the stars. The inner, what is it, if not intensified sky, hurled through with birds and deep with the winds of homecoming? But thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. And I am honored to have been able to share some space and time with you.